today it's going to be that we're going to be talking about sleep habit breakdown. And what I mean with that is actually we're not going to have a look at what you can do, but why things fail. So we're going to have a look at why good advice falls short. And this is always the case if you are not aware of how to build a sleep habit. Because one thing is doing the right things, right? It's tricky enough to figure out what you need to do to be able to recover your sleep as quickly as humanly possible. And there's a lot of things and tips that you can find here at Sleeptrust, or if you go to sleeptrust.eu, follow the podcast and so on, a lot of things. But once you've found that, it's even worse if you do things, you see that you're starting to reap results, and then you fall short of doing the thing, and that's why you are not consistently sleeping enough. That's why you don't feel confident that you can sleep, and you can. So today, super important topic, and one that most people skip because it's more important to figure out what's the thing that actually works when it comes to my sleep. And I get that, it's the most problematic thing. But after that, right after that, it's about following through and doing the things on a consistent basis. So yeah, great. If you have any questions during the session, feel free to drop them into the comments. I'm going to reply to all of them. And if I see them during this live session, I'm going to reply and answer to them in this live session. But as said, at any time, feel free to put your questions down there. Even if you're watching this as a replay, as most of you will be, then just drop your question into the comments and I'm going to come back to them. But let's dive into the topic, sleep habits. So now let's say you're in a situation where you know that you should be doing something and it's hard for you to consistently follow through on that. And that's where the rubber hits the road, right? So what can we do? And good news here, there's a lot of science around how to build habits. And we kind of all know and agree that one part of that is that we just need to repeat things over and over and over and over again. Repetition is the name of the game when it comes to how we build those new neural connections in our brains, right? Because that's what we're doing. If you imagine a field of wheat, and now you walk through that field of wheat, then you will see after you walk through that once from A to B, you're going to see something like a small path. The wheat straws are slightly bent, but if you do that over and over and over again, then suddenly you have a real path. So now you see the field of wheat in front of your inner eye, and you see that path. And that's how we build habits. That's exactly how our brains work. They fire neural connections that wire together, and we build these pathways in our brain that make it so easy for us to unconsciously do things consistently that we don't even have to think about. Now, let's say we need to change something. And just as an example, I'm going to go with, let's say we're going to go with avoiding using our mobiles in our beds, right? We don't want to do that. And this is just an example how to create, to design, and to execute a habit in a way that will serve you so well, because it's going to make it so much easier and maybe even fun. So what we're technically doing now is that we're creating a second path through that wheat field. You must know that when you change your behavior once, it's like walking through. Now the old path is like this from A to B. Now you want to walk this path. So you walk through that wheat field once. And you see that slight path as you did the first time, right? When you built that initial habit to play with your mobile in your bed. So now you're avoiding that. So you're building a new habit. You run through that once, twice, you do it 3 times. And after you do it over and over again, you see a new path building up, which will help you to do the habit. It's going to be much easier to not use your mobile because you're getting used to the new habit. But B, you still need to watch one thing and know one thing. It's super simple to move into the old habit again, into the old pattern, because that old path is still there, right? So if you switch and you move to the old path, it's going to be very easy. And that's why we fall back into our old habits so easily. So you just need to keep that in mind. And the big lesson here is, even if you slip back into your old habit, that's okay. Happens to all of us. Like, there are no perfect human beings, and you and I will not be the first. At least it's not the odds or likelihoods of this are very, very small. So if it happens, just decide, recommit, and walk that new path again. Like, if you fall back to your old habit for one day, no problem. The new path is still there. You just need to move into it quickly again and do it over and over and over again. And over time, like, the new path is going to build out, and the old one is going to grow together. You're not going to see that anymore, and that just takes time. So that's the frame. I hope that makes sense for you. And now comes the really exciting stuff, because to build that new path, science says there are a couple of things that we should do to make it so much easier for us to actually succeed. Because most people, let's face it, most people fail. If we do this the wrong way, it's actually the road to failure. But good news, if we do it the right way, it's also the road to success. So what are the steps? And there are books written, like a lot of books: Atomic Habits, Small Habits, Mini Habits, you name it. Like, there are hundreds of books all around habits. But if we look at Pareto, 80-20, right? 20% of what we do delivers 80% of our results. If we look at that, I condensed that down for you. And it's these four steps that we need to take care of. Only four. So let's start here. Number one is the trigger. We need something, a trigger, a cue, something that will kick off our habit, right? So now let's say we want to avoid playing around with our mobiles in our beds. So we need to trigger something that will remind us that we don't want to do that in this case. What can we do? And like, there are a couple of things. You can be flexible, creative around this. So you can have a post-it at your little night desk, little post-it, no smartphone, whatever, right? Oh, that's a trigger. I know, I see it. No, I'm not going to do that. Or you could set an alarm on your mobile, actually. So you set a trigger. Think about a trigger, something that will remind you to do this habit, and something that once you see that, you're going to perform the habit, right? Bringing us to step number two: ease friction. So now, if we build a new habit, or we want to avoid doing an old habit, we want to ease the process or bring friction into the process. Now, if we, in our example, if we want to stop playing around with our mobiles, right? We don't want to do that. So to ease the process, it would be just great if the mobile would not be lying on our night desks, right? If it's not there, that's bringing friction into what we don't want to do, right? So we could simply turn it off. That's one level of friction. We could put it outside of the room, which would be a much higher level of friction, right? Now, if we're lying in our bed and we might not be able to fall asleep right away, and we're like, our old path tells us, oh, play with your mobile, and now we're getting treated to do so. Now we've got friction. Now we have to get up. Maybe we have to go downstairs, or go somewhere where we locked up our phone. We don't want to do that. So we're adding friction, making it harder for us to move through that old path. Okay. And if we do something new, we're just going to ease it. We're going to see, okay, what can I do to make it easier for me to perform the thing? So step number two, very simple and straightforward, is to ease it, to put in some friction. Number three, very essential part, is to perform the action. We need to do the things. Like, it's repetition that brings us our new habit. And now, this is why it's on this little card here. The secret, and that's what most people don't know, is that we can perform the new habit in our brains only. So that means if you and I sit down and think about us, close our eyes, visualize the process, seeing us going to bed, putting our mobile away, going to bed, falling asleep without playing with our mobile. That's performing the new habit. Our brains rarely are not able to differentiate between things that we actually do and things that we only imagine to do, which makes no sense at all, depending on where you're coming from, or complete sense, because if you look at our bodies, our brains, neuroscience, from a neuroscience perspective, everything that we find and see and experience to be real is not, it's just a representation. Our eyes get a signal delivered into our brains, right? So everything that we see is put together in our brains. And that goes so far, like you might say, oh, that's only partly true. I know what I see, and so on and so forth. But if you look at how a lens works, and our eyes are just lenses, a lens picks up on the light and actually flips the picture. So if our brains would not convert that and flip it backwards, we would see everything standing on their heads. Like that would not work. So our brains get the information, but they process it. And what we discover and experience as our reality is actually a result of our brains putting together the reality through the sensors, our eyes, our ears, our kinesthetic experiences, and builds together the reality that we experience. So if we visualize things, that's the secret tip, and you do that over and over and over again in your mind, you're already living and building your new habit. Really cool. Other than that, actually doing it obviously is our goal. So no matter if you visualize or you do it, you're building your new habit. You're walking through that wheat field, you're building that new pathway in your brain. So last step here, and that's something that a lot of people skip to, is to celebrate. We're often hard to ourselves once we fail, which at some point, one point or another, we all do. We're very good at giving out to us. And that's fair. Like we shouldn't be like, it's fair to be critical. It's not good to bash ourselves, but to be critical and say, okay, we want to do something else, right? This is what we want to do. This is how we showed up. Let's get there again, recommit and do it again. But what we often forget is to celebrate ourselves. So once you run through the process, let's say you sit down and you visualize. You run through that process, like in our example was avoiding mobile usage. For you, it's probably going to be something else. Then what you want to do is actually, after you run through that in your mind and you perform the habit, you want to celebrate yourself for doing so. You just did something that built your new habit, that supported to build a new, sustainable, consistent habit, giving you the confidence that you will be able to do that and that you will, as an end result, experience consistent, high-quality sleep. So celebrate yourself. And that can be, maybe you want to reward yourself with, a cup of tea. Maybe you want to listen to some music. Do something small. It can be something that you say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to meet up with a friend and drink a cup of coffee with them, whatever. Like maybe you're going to avoid the coffee if it's too late, sleep-wise, and you're going to switch to something that is better suited for that. But you figure out something to reward yourself, and you can consciously say to yourself, okay, I'm celebrating that I actually did this. Now, for 7 days, I didn't use my mobile. I'm celebrating myself. This is awesome. And maybe start with the first day. Oh, I did it the first time. Oh, I did it the second time. Don't wait a week. And then you can expand that and say, okay, now after a week, after 2 weeks, after a month. But don't forget to celebrate yourself. It's just so important. And science says like it's going to make it so much easier for you to create habits that stick. And that's what I wish for you. So these are the 4 steps that you need to create a new habit. And by the way, just to give you a little bit context, give me 1 second to show you something. I am going to share my screen with you because all of this is part of a system. So typically this is where most people want to move. It's body, nutrition, mind. These are the 3 areas of ourselves where we can work on to improve our sleep. Like there's something we need to change, right? As Einstein said, if we want to see other results, we must be insane to believe that that will happen if we don't change something that we do different every single day. So most people want to know what to do different. And that's what we're doing here in these 3 steps. But this is the middle part, right? What most people are actually lacking and missing is down here, fundamental things. How does my sleep goal look like? What do I need to do? Am I accountable? Am I actually measuring what I'm doing? Where am I coming from? Like a clear sleep assessment. Super important. If you don't know where you're standing, it's going to be hard to move towards a goal or to find the right things to do. So all of these things you need to know, and this is what we're talking about today, habits. Once you know what to do, which is like body, nutrition, mind, right? You need to build a habit that sticks. So walk through those 4 steps. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Definitely download this sleep map. It's free. I use it in every single of my every single coaching that I do. And you can download it for free. I'm sharing this for free. And it goes along with the 10-minute video. We'll walk you through all of the steps because you need to know if you are doing the right things. So for some of you, you're saying, I'm accountable. Okay, check. I've got my sleep goal. I know how good sleep looks for me. But for some of you, that might not be clear. And if you work on building a habit or looking for the right things, but the underlying foundation here is not in place, odds are it's not going to work. And that's frustrating. It really is. Like, I speak to people nearly every day that have frustrating experiences. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to. Sometimes things work, then they don't. They are lacking a clear system. So download the Sleeptrust Sleep Map. It's free. I'm going to drop the link into the description. And here, rituals. Okay, you want to build all of these things into rituals that serve your life, rituals that, run on autopilot. And mastered, you want to learn things like you always want to reflect and see what's working well, what's not working that well, and what can I do to improve my situation. That's true for any aspect of our lives, but especially if we're working on our sleep and we want to find back to superb sleep on the fastest track, then this is super important. So I hope that you enjoyed this session. I really hope that you bring those 4 steps, here they are, to action into your life. Download the sleep map for sure. Do that. Watch that 10-minute video. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm happy to answer all of your questions. And with that, wishing you a wonderful Friday or whenever you're watching this, and see you in the next session when we're going to talk about rituals.